Welcome to the ForestSchool podcast, a show where I, Lewis, and my co-host, Wem Southerner, set out to explore a shared pedagogy. It's a space where cerebral thinking matters more than craptivities, where educational purpose outweighs pretty resources, and where inclusion is more than just a buzzword. Join us as we overthink the trivial, deep dive into whatever sparks our dopamine, and reflect on what it means to truly hold space for others, holistically and without judgment. Thanks for being here. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Behind me is Ringsfield Hall. It's been an educational community asset since 1971, but it's under threat. We have an opportunity to save this place. Thousands of children have passed through the hall, the dorms, the grounds of Ringsfield Hall. They have been developed over 50 years to support children and adults reconnecting. We want to continue that with the next stage of the story of Ringsfield Hall. KindaEducation have a plan to build a multi-generational living school. A living school where children and adults learn together. Where the children learn their maths and their English and their science from living. A place where all are seen and all are heard and all are together. A new model for education.
Hello listeners and watchers. We are here with...
What a creepy start.
Watchers.
Hello listeners and watchers.
Well, you know
It's like it's a true crime podcast.
Yeah, well it is, isn't it? We are here with Mell Harrison from KindaEducation, and we've had Mell on the podcast before, and when we know Mell, but in case listeners haven't heard any episodes with Mell before or come across your work, Mell, can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your work and tell us a bit about Kinda, because we're kind of recording this episode with a specific focus because you've got some really exciting news and an exciting project which is brewing, and I really want to hear all about it, and I think our listeners will be really interested in this kind of new model for education that you've got going on. But yes, can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and about Kinda?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mell, and I've been involved in nature-based education full-time for about 30 years now. Built a small school with our children and educated our kids together really early on, 20 odd years ago, and have been doing earth education and ForestSchool for quite a long time. Absolutely love it, adore it. It's kind of, runs through my veins. And KindaEducation began in 2018, and it was a group of us who had for many years come together and gone, we've got to make change, and then we kind of go off into our own lives, and then we come back and go, we've really got to do something, of mixed skills and things like that. And I'm a ForestSchool tutor as well, so I worked with Greenlight Trust for a while, worked at Ringsfield Hall for a long time, which is why I'm so connected with it. Then I moved to Greenlight Trust for a while and set up KindaEducation, co-founded one day a week whilst I was working at Greenlight Trust. And KindaEducation is a sociocratic learning space. We have two different woodlands. We have a woodland in a place called Halesworth, and there we do our multi-generational work. So we work with a home-educated community, we work with our elders, we work with women, and we do our family forest school. The 5-acre woodland there, which is the space that we first had, it became too small for what we were doing without having a major impact on the woodland. And we began to get more and more children who had more complex needs. We were being noticed for our pedagogy that was supporting those children. So we ended up kind of growing into an alternative provision as well. And we moved into another woodland, which is near a place called Beckles in Suffolk. And there we run our alternative provision. Since then, one of our directors has also brought 17 acres of what was farmland around the outskirts of our heart woodland at Carlywoods, and we are supporting her and the community to regenerate that land. So we've planted 7,000 trees, and there's a community garden, and the children and the adults are all involved in that. So at the moment, our multi-generational work mostly happens over at Carlywoods, and then our our alternative provision, where we have, you know, some people coming in and moving around. We've only been there for 2 years now. That happens in another woodland, and we run 4 days a week. So our vision has always been to create a multi-generational learning space, where our elders and our young children are together, and the mentorship that happens when you mix ages together could be rekindled within our community. And our vision has always been to create a school. And that's kind of where we're coming to now. We're like I said at the beginning, we're sociocratic. So there's about 40 of us who work at Kinda, and we organise using a circle structure. We use Sociocracy, sociocratic circle structure in doing that. So what is really important to us, not just the work that we're doing, we do ForestSchool, and then we do ForestSchool plus some, which, you know, has kind of grown as we've grown. And yeah, I was going to say something else then about our pedagogy, but that's just gone out of my mind, and it will come back to me.
So many like different parts. It's such a interesting journey, and I can imagine how all of those things are connected and kind of morph. Not in, you know, it's always nice hearing journeys that haven't been like here's the route map, we put it out 15 years ago, we knew where we were going to go, when it's like, oh, we started doing this, and then opportunities for this came up, and so organically kind of moved over to here, and then actually the needs, you know, changed, and so now it's taken this shape. And like that kind of fluidity is something that I think a lot of education is kind of missing, isn't it? I think there's a lot of spaces that are trying to find a system, or like a singular kind of like, oh, if we could just tweak it enough, we could just do this forever in exactly the same way, and it would be perfect and done and never need touching again. And I really enjoy hearing about projects and journeys that are a bit more like, oh, and it's always going to be tweaked, and it's always going to be changing, you know. And now we're into this next, you know, I'm going to call it a significant change. Can you tell us a bit more about the project that's coming out this one?
I can. I knew I was going to say just a little while ago, the part of our project that is equally as important to the learning spaces that we're creating is the way that we work together. So, you know, that, and actually that's a whole journey in itself. When you get a group of people who have come together and they've been in schools, they've been in the NHS, they've been working in other places, and to bring people together and go, no, your voice is really needed here and really valued here, and we really want to see you. That's a whole journey in itself, that culture of creating that invisible culture to everybody else, which is, you know, is very visible for us internally, and it's not really something that we shout about externally because it's just our governance system. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And I suppose we've been going we're in our 8th year right now, and you know, there's been challenges, there's been loads of celebrations, and we feel like we're ready for this next stage. It's kind of come at a time where our community is strong enough to step into this. You know, our roles and responsibilities are clear enough. Yeah. So the project is this amazing, magical, incredible place called Ringsfield Hall, or Ringsfield Eco Centre, or Ringsfield Woodland Activity Centre, I think it was called for a while. It's a beautiful Victorian house, 14 bedrooms with 14 acres of land. And within that land, there was an old Victorian greenhouse that's kind of collapsed that will be rebuilt. There's a straw bale building where a group of us built the straw bale building with our children and educated our children together there, which is when I landed there. And there's paddocks for animals, and there's a beautiful art barn and a dell and woodlands and meadows. The place is totally magic, and it's where I found my pedagogy, because I had incredible mentors there. I was so lucky, and so many of us. So there's a few of us who used to work at Ringsfield for many years, and then we went off and did our thing, that are working at Kinda now. And so we heard through the grapevine that on one particular day in it was January 24, that all of the team there had been told they'd been made redundant that morning. They had no idea that it was going to happen. And unfortunately, the trust who was looking after the hall went into liquidation. We didn't know about the liquidation at that point. We just knew it was closed. We knew that it was in financial trouble. And because we love the place, I mean, I know every single tree. I can visualize it now when I'm talking to you. You know, I know the mother tree and grandfather oak and Nigel and Maureen and all the names of all the trees. And so as soon as we heard this, because it's just been such a magical place, the history is incredible. When we heard about it, I got in contact with one of the trustees there and the founder of the Ringsfield Hall Trust and said, can we help? Can we help you raise the money? What's going on? You can't close. Unfortunately, they felt that they were at such a point where they couldn't get help themselves anymore. And so what happened from there was us going, well, what is it that we can do? And there's a process where if a charity has assets when the charity folds, after they've paid their debts to whoever they owe money to, they can transfer their assets from one charity to another. And that's where we are. So we've had a year and a half of negotiating, of talking with liquidators and receivers and creating business models and business plans and talking to local councillors. And there's been so much work that has gone into bringing it where it is now. You know, the founder of the Ringsfield Hall Trust is in his 90s, and he's incredible and really wants it to continue to thrive and be a place where children can really feel what it's like to be within nature. And you know, there's two scenarios here. And we're working with the Charity Commission as well. We have to line up objectives. It's quite complicated. And the Charity Commission is very busy. So, you know, if we are not successful in this, which we will be, then it will be sold. And then the money will be given to the charity of the original trust's choice. And that's not what the founder wants for it to happen. That's not what anybody would like to happen. We, you know, want to see the children and the family still thriving there. Yeah. So when I worked there with others, when we worked there, we had this vision of this multi-generational. It's like we put the outdoor kitchen up, we planted 800 trees, we planted a traditional Suffolk orchard. We did all of these things knowing that one day all of the projects will come together. Because it was a residential centre for schools for many years, and children would come on a coach and they'd have their week and then they'd go away again. And so, yeah, it just sort of feels like there's a little seed with its little roots have just got a little bit deeper, and the hall is just going, come on, we're ready now. And I'm quite excited, as you can tell.
Yeah. So is the idea that you would bring all of the strands of your work into that one place? You talked about your alternative provision work and your work with elders, and you've talked about multi-generational. So would you still have distinct sites as well as this place, or are you going to kind of, do you envision it being the kind of absolute home of all of your work?
It will be our third site. That's what we're hoping for. We're hoping to keep everything sustainable in where we are, because they're different communities. But it will bring all of the strands together. And that's been kind of like part of the vision has been, okay, well, we'll build connections with working with elders and, you know, end of life care and, you know, all of that, those kind of connections. And we'll build connections with our families, our local families and our women, you know, and our home ed community and the families who need that extra support, you know, with our alternative provision children. But the vision has always been to do it in one place at one time, so that, you know, when I talk about the vision, I imagine when I'm talking about it, how the day will look, and the day will be, everybody will arrive at the same time. There's a really long feasting table under a timber frame building out at the front of the hall itself, where we'll have breakfast. You know, our elders, our families, our SEN adults, and our children. And And to begin with, we'll draw together our alternative provision and our elders and our kind of mental health wellbeing support with adults, building on the additional early years. We're early years registered with Ofsted ready. We have been for a while, so we can take younger AP children. And then as that grows and as that settles and as we're steady in the background, we'll be registering to open a specialist school. And the school will be the heart of the community. And at that point, our alternative provision will move, onto another site, because the dynamics of the changing children in and out in alternative provision will be a very different dynamic to children who are coming to school. And it will mean that we'd be able to keep some of our little dudes that arrive with us in our alternative provision, that at the moment they stay for months, years, and then they go to another school or another place. So it's the vision.
And I've seen you describe it as a living school. Can you tell us a bit about that phrase? I mean, you've described really magically there the kind of vision that you have. Is living school just is that the kind of name for what you've just described, or is there sort of more detail to that?
The living school is, it goes as far back as Dewey, who talked about education being living, going all the way through to Paulo Freire, talking about, making things really relevant to what we're doing and what we understand within our communities. So it's like, how do I explain that? How do I explain that in a couple of words? So living school is what we came up with. And the living school is because our whole curriculum will be based around what's needed in our community. So on that table for breakfast, it will be what needs doing. The door needs fixing, the fence needs doing, the animals need feeding, we're getting our vegetables, we've got to cook our vegetables, who's going to do what with all of the different ages. And, the children will weave in between all of that. So, not you must do this and you have to do this because it's going to be child-centered, right? But more you choose to be where you want to go and what you want to be. So therefore you're learning your maths because you're measuring things, you're sorting things out, you're doing your ordering, you're doing your planning, your science is because everything around you is totally alive and with whatever we're doing. And your English is we're telling stories all of the time, we're writing down our projects, and so it happens more naturally through living rather than through we are going to learn this today because I think it's a really good idea that we learn this thing. So that's the theory.
Yeah.
Can I ask Mo, so we've already talked a little bit before we started recording about that you are kind of in contact with some people in different spheres as this project is like taking on different realms, and and I think I wanted to ask you, I don't even know if I have a question, so I'm going to start talking and maybe I'll find one along the way. There's something in there, I think, that's like, for a lot of people who are working, maybe not specifically in outdoors, but in the ForestSchool community, who have come to ForestSchool because they are maybe ex-teachers or people who are kind of a bit burnt out of admin and bureaucracy and quite like the kind of like, I'm in this space and I'm doing this and it all works in a different way. And I think as much as that is a strength of ForestSchool, I think sometimes it then puts us back in this box of like, okay, but it's almost not a real way of doing things. It's a pretend way of doing things that works on a Thursday afternoon when year 6 go out, but it's not the real way of running, and particularly because a lot of ForestSchool businesses end up being quite small because they're quite independent people or small teams of people, that then maybe there's a perception that this way of doing things in an alternative manner isn't sustainable at a larger scale, or isn't kind of like, that's not how, I'm going to use air quotes here, that's not how grown-ups would run a business or would do, how are you finding, because I don't believe that to be true at all, but how are you finding interacting with people who might have different perceptions of, quite a big project, say we're taking on, financial things and we're going to run this whole independent school, and then going and it's run sociocratically and also it's a living school and all these cool, lovely, wibbly wobbly phrases. What's that kind of interface like between different groups of stakeholders? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got lots of different documents that I send different people. It's, when you walk into a room and you read the room and you go, okay, what is it that this person needs me to say for them to be able to understand, to walk beside them in their understanding rather than me bombard them with, let me talk about all of these things that are like, woo, over here. One of the first things that happened before we did the crowdfund was somebody else took the writing and did it. They took my blurb and they played with it and made it simple so that anybody could understand it, because I want to tell everybody everything all about it, and actually it's step by step and stage by stage, and I think it's the same with any understanding. Is people, if you kind of look at different circles and all going out to the outside, right on the outside here, you've got people who really don't understand education whatsoever, or understand the issues that we have with the mental health and our children. And then you come all the way into the middle and find people like ourselves who are trying to make a difference in there and are trying to understand as much as possible. And so you have to gently move people from the outside circles all the way through the different layers before in the inside they can go, now I see you. And I feel like this as an autistic woman as well, actually, that sometimes I have to put layers on so until the person can really see me, and then when everything else is understood, that bit can be seen. And God, that's a really weird way to put it, but yeah. So there's different layering. So this week I've spoken to a Children's Services Commissioner, and I've also spoken to a local person who really wants to get involved really into radical education. And so the conversations are very different right there. I feel like we've been doing this work, and we've done quite a lot of liaising with children's services or local authority, and we're quality assured and we're Ofsteded, and so those layers have already been put here so that people can begin to go through, okay, well, they've been doing this work, these are the changes that we're seeing, this is the reputation that they have, we can get in a bit closer. And as that happens, then they begin to see what's at the very center of that, of those layers. And I think it's a real skill to be able to do that, because I get really excited and want to jump into the middle and go, and this is what it's going to feel like and look like. And, but those layers are important. And
that sounds like the ForestSchool ethos, though, doesn't it? To me, that's what you've just described is I go in, I see what the needs are, and then I facilitate meeting those needs as best I can. And that's so amazing to hear that, not just being something that is again, I'm using air quotes, for kids, or a novel way of doing things. It sounds like an incredibly I have nothing else. It sounds like a very healthy way to interact with all these bodies, and to, especially if you can hold that kind of needs-based approach and be like, listen, where some people might get het up about, food hygiene or breathing down my neck, and this is ridiculous, and why are they asking me to treat it, and go, they've got stuff that they need, and I can meet those needs, or the team can find a way to meet those needs. That's really nice to hear that approach, works in all these different spaces.
Yeah, and it's educational, but it's also combating loneliness. Our elders, there's so much loneliness that goes on, within our elders, and especially locally, people are living alone, and to be able to come together and support local authority and to support other groups who are working alongside our adults who are feeling really lonely, and being able to say, look, this is going to combat that too. So in some places we might be going in and talking about the social impact of all being together, because the model that we are visualizing is a model that we hope is transferable. So everything we're doing, we're trying to document, so that at any time, if anybody says, hey, we'd really like to set up a kind of school or use all of your learning, maybe it's a different school but not a kind of school, we can go, here's our bump, have it. This is the stuff that we learn. This is the stuff that we still need to learn. And there's kind of different sections, with the 8 directions kind of thing. We have our 8 directions of our business plan and our vision, and the dream is that one day, because we'll also be running training at the centre, to be able to say to people, when people say, oh yeah, well, it's all very nice in theory, what does it look like in practice? And to be able to say, let's walk out the door and let's go and take a look is, incredible. And we know that most schools will not be able to do that whole model, but there will be sections of that schools, mainstream schools, will be able to do. Putting up a yurt or a small building in the garden and having elders coming to do some gardening, storytelling, or being able to have families in early years come in and use a space, because there's round this way anyway, there's quite a lot of grounds that are just cut grass in schools or concrete. And, so to be able to bring in other projects to support everybody is one of the dreams, that we'll be able to say, okay, so you want to work with elders within your ground, we can support you in that. Come and see what we do, and we'll come and see what you've got, and we'll link you up with some people, and we'll see if we can do that. Or you've got space for some chickens and ducks, and maybe you could have some of our SEN young adults coming in and supporting you to look after those, or just to draw it together in that way, but also to be able to break it down to make it achievable for educational spaces to be able to take on some of it.
I was really pleased to hear you there talk about how you are documenting this process, and you're going to run training and really make transparent the process that you've been through, or some of it anyway, to potentially create more schools that are similar. Because I was going to ask you about, there's definitely people going to be listening to this thinking, oh my God, that is my dream. Like, not necessarily to run a school exactly like yours, but to create an alternative education setting. Perhaps that is a little bit bigger than ForestSchool, or perhaps it's a home ed family who are listening and thinking, oh, do you know what? I'd just love to be able to create a wider space where more families can engage for more time. I know I've definitely felt that way, and just, daydreamed about what this ideal paradise of education would be. And there are groups, aren't there, on kind of Facebook and things, of people kind of asking questions and trying to share practice, and some kind of Zoom calls that people do. Do you find that you said you're meeting people who are local and just going, oh, I'm really up for that, I'll help. Are you finding that you think there is a kind of momentum, maybe nationally or even internationally, who are thinking along the same lines as you guys are thinking about this, like, well, okay, mainstream education is not working for a huge number of people. What can we all individually or collectively do? Do you think that momentum is growing nationally?
Absolutely. When we set up Wild Meadows, which was our little we went 5 days a week, and we did Parentis Loco. We didn't know what we were doing. We set up our own little school, and we home educated our kids, but did it in that way. And there was hardly anybody around then. It was really hard to reach out to anybody, to find anybody that was doing something similar. And now everywhere, I mean, the home ed community is growing, and the connections, I think, with, our social media supporting people and groups like, Progressive Education, there's more and more groups that are there, and people are finding it easier to connect. And there's definitely that momentum to keep going. And because there's such a need, there's such a need. There's so many children who are not in school. That grew to the sort of, between 10% and to 21% after COVID of children who weren't attending because of mental health. It's a massive amount of children who really struggled. That's beginning to go down again. But there's definitely momentum. The home ed community in its own, there's so much going on. Even when we started our home ed group 8 years ago, it was one of the only groups that was happening locally. Now they're everywhere. There's so much, and so much choice as well. So I can feel it coming together. And I suppose one of the things I feel like we really need as a movement is an understanding and the skills to be able to self-organize. Because in my experience, the thing that stops the momentum going is the inability to deal with conflict within the people that you are working beside to try and make something happen. You have something comes up and you disagree over it, and people get cross about it, and then people leave, and so to be able to, because we're not taught to deal with conflict. In schools, how many of us have had conflict resolution experience other than, the adults who are mentoring us around us? And if we've never had that as adults, it's really difficult to speak your truth and to say it with love and to have somebody else respond in truth and in love. And I feel like that's the next stage for all of us is, come on, we've got some big changes to make. We can show them how to do this differently, but to show them how to do it differently, we need to deal with that and lean in. And when things are really challenging, lean in and explore why. And if we're doing that as adults or as people who are running businesses, then the people around us or the children who are around us are seeing that modeled constantly, and that will support them to be able to do the same. And I think that that's a massive part of where the change will be. If our children love and adore nature and can deal with conflict and are able to speak their truth, bosh, what a difference the world would be, and question everything. Be critical.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, if somebody was feeling this kind of fire inside to create something like you guys have over the years, I was going to ask where, the very, very starting point might be once you have that kind of inspiration, or a group of you have that inspiration. But I kind of feel like you've answered that question there about laying the groundwork of communication within your group of people who want to make this project happen, and maybe to look at sociocracy together first and look at that way of communicating with each other before you even begin thinking about where might this school be, or what are our vision. It's all about, do you think that's a good place to start?
Absolutely. You can have the most amazing place to do something, but if you then got to employ your team at that point, that's a real challenge. It's not that it can't be done. Of course it can. People can do that within their community, and they've got those skills to do that. But you're so much stronger if you know each other. If something messes up or doesn't go right, you can turn to the person next to you and go, well, we messed up there. Now what? Rather than, oh, well, he did and she did, and it's that person's fault, and there's this and and we are in a blame culture, and understanding that the first signal to communication breakdown is blame. Just that. If you all go, whoa, okay, we're all blaming that person, or I'm hearing some blame stuff going on over here, or if I'm noticing some blame going on over here, how do we now communicate more? We've got to be clearer and more honest and give space for people to do that. How many people really even realize that as a child? We look at our media, it's constantly blaming because communication is broken down.
Do you feel like there's a way to, because I agree that those are, I was watching something the other day, oh God, I said the other day I start sentences like pulling a lawnmower. There's 3 good goes and then the third one will start. Do you feel like that's something that people are able to learn in an abstract way? Because for my personal journey, Wem and I have talked about this before, where like I spent a long time devouring any kind of like business book, or like this is how body language works, or this is how to talk to people. The 7 conversations you have to have with people. Here's 9 ways to talk about these things, and they have some value to me. As like you were saying earlier about having layers, sometimes it's useful to have a guidebook of like, oh, this is how people expect stuff to be responded to. But the biggest bits of learning I have done have in this kind of sphere of conflict resolution and in holding I don't want to call it a business, but holding a project together with a group of people. The biggest bits of learning I've had there have been like first person experiences, have been experiential things. Do you think that the sort of the spread of this has to be people come to these sort of alternatively held projects, learn the skills, and then go on and set their own up? Or do you think some of it is distillable in a way that people can learn at a distance, or does that distance thing take something away from it? How do you feel about kind of that nugget of things growing?
I suppose all I can talk about is how it is for me.
Sure.
And really for me, like the stuff that happens in front of me that I am involved in, that is my biggest teacher. And then being able to go to the books and go, yeah, oh my God, yeah, that's happening, and yes, I've seen that, rather than it all be here and we go, aha, I read this on page 37 of this book. Instead of that, I'm going home and going, oh my God, I remember when I read about mirror neurons, it was like that. I was watching how people, like, I don't know, when I did my ForestSchool training many moons ago, and I remember watching how people change behavior when they're from anger to learning how to regulate and return to ventral vagal and go, how is that happening? How have they been angry for so long? And then understanding about the mirror neurons and go, wow, even if we model this around our young people, we're rewiring the brain. Boof. And it's like that for me, when it comes to the conflict resolution and learning so much by doing. Every day we circle together, and our alternative provision, there's sometimes 17 adults each day. That's a big group of people to do conflict resolution with. That's a big bunch of people to arrive in the morning and brush the dust and say, hey, how's everybody doing? And at the end of the day, you can have some big days in alternative provision where at the end you're all like, whoa, that was a whirlwind. How are we all doing? Differences of opinion. And so I'm in it and learning from, okay, well, I should have shut my mouth then. And, I should have, lent in more then, and then I'll read something on nonviolent communication, or I'll read something on culture, and it will be, there it is. I need to bring that in. I need to try that now. So there's no better teacher than experience, is there?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, there's like lots of questions brewing in my head, and like, oh, tell us more about like books and stuff. But I think that's a whole other podcast maybe down the line. If people want to find out more, because you're also fundraising at this stage, aren't you, for your project?
We
so
are.
You've got a crowdfunder going. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we've got a crowdfunder going, and you can find that by looking. We'll obviously put a link in or something like. Well, you will, because you know what you're doing. But Save Ringsfield Hall, help Kinda with KINDA, Save Ringsfield Hall, and the crowdfund will come up. We have social media on. I think we've got one of our team's daughter is starting doing TikTok for us.
Woohoo!
But we are on Instagram, KindaEducation. We're on Facebook, KindaEducation, and our website is kindaeducation.org.uk.
Amazing. So people can also, I imagine it'll be a really good thing to start, if you're not already following the project, to follow now and to think about when you are offering training and things like that further down the line. Fingers crossed that it all is successful. And then, if people feel like they're drawn to this kind of work, then they can actually visit and see it in action and learn from you guys as a team as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be welcoming whoever wants to come and see. Definitely.
I want to come.
Oh yeah. Second, please.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
It's mainly just the description of breakfast. That's you've sold it on the breakfast.
At the moment, it's like this could happen in 2 months' time. This could happen in 6 months' time. And so for a small organisation who have got a waiting list of children, it's what do we do next? We can't. I'm not going to use that word, but it's challenging to think of ways forward when this big thing is right there and we don't know when it's going to be, and we're having to say, no, I'm sorry, we don't have spaces right now, but we'll get back in touch when we do. So it's a real balance, and they're an incredible bunch of humans, those kind of folk, to be able to walk this journey of uncertainty and need, going, well, this is where the need is and this is where we're going.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, Mel. And we'll hopefully we'll be able to check back in I imagine 3 or 4 days when it's all finished up, and we'll stick another update in the But we will check back in. I think it would be nice to check back in on the project in like future episodes if you're up for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for getting this out there as well. Really appreciate it. The further it goes, because it's people getting in contact with us outside the crowdfund, which is, you know, been amazing. Some people that of the history of the hall, people who lived there way before it was bought in 71, you know, and there's a Ringsfield Hall in Australia that the woman, there was the niece of the person who built the hall, who was a spy, allegedly. She ended up moving to Australia and she built a Ringsfield Hall in Australia.
Oh
So
my God.
because of her heart and the family, I suppose she was their great aunt. They were walking past Ringsfield Hall recently, and a friend was walking her dog and met them. And so we're now connected with them too, who have got like the original portraits of Samuel Bass and his wife, you know, that we can hang back on the wall when we get back in there. And it's just, it's releasing so much history. And I remember staying in the Hermitage because there's a Hermitage there, and I remember playing there as a child, and I just want to capture all of it in a film and
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
a documentary about it all. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess also, you know, you've already described how some people are getting involved, even if they can't help significantly financially, that they're able to lend their skills with social media, or, you know, finding out about the history, or, you know, more practical kind of things that they could offer. Yeah, you know, if anybody lives local to Suffolk, or maybe even the stuff that people can help out with over, you know, long distances, maybe they can get in touch as well. Yeah.
I had a lovely conversation with somebody, and I won't say his name because he might not want me to, but somebody who's in Sweden who had heard of the project and said, hey, can I help write to people who are neurodivergent, left school early and did really well in business? Can I write to them for you and let them know about your project? And we had about an hour natter to each other. And so I love that web that is woven when you
good work attracts good people, Mel. You're doing good work. Amazing. Oh, okay. Right. My brain's firing off. I'm going to call it there. Lovely to chat to you, Mel.
Yeah, lovely to chat to you too.